though.
Ooh!
Yeah.
I mean, you weren't kidding.
Yeah.
Hello again, my name is Sophie. I'm excited to be doing some videos here at the Northeast Georgia History Center, introducing a few Japanese textile techniques. I'm not an expert on any of them, so the idea is that we're learning together, and you can see what kinds of things you can create with not too much experience. So, we've already tried shibori dyeing and made lots of fun patterns. This time, we're looking at Sashiko, which is an embroidery technique using a continuous stitch. Sashiko is a functional form of embroidery used to repair and strengthen clothing as it wore out. Over time, it became decorative as well, and there are tons of beautiful designs you can create. Indigo was an easily accessible dye in Japan, so a common example of Sashiko you'll see is white stitches on a deep blue background. That's a great look to replicate too, since you can see your stitches really well. So from an absolute beginner perspective, I know it's easy to get stressed about needing to buy a bunch of materials just to try something. Sometimes I'll end up never trying something because it's overwhelming. So I'm going to also list substitutes that crafters might already have lying around, and maybe you can practice with those, and if you like it, then go out and buy the nicer stuff. First thing is needles, a Sashiko needle. Sashiko needles are longer and thicker than standard needles. They're about 2 inches long, and that is because of how you load the stitches on your needle, which I'll cover more later. A good alternative though is a cotton darning needle, or I had some embroidery needles around and I just used those. Next is a Sashiko thimble. So here I have a more familiar thimble, which is the kind that you wear on your finger. And here is a Sashiko thimble that you wear like a ring and you push with your whole hand instead of just your finger. I did some stitching with the standard thimble, and I noticed my fingers getting really sore from pinching and pushing the fabric, so the Sashiko thimble was really nice to have. Fabric! I used scraps from my fabric bin, and we're going to use dark colored fabric for our demonstration so the stitches show up better. I also want to keep the iconic blue and white color palette. And of course, the thread. Sashiko thread is cotton and matte, so it's not shiny. And unlike embroidery floss, you do not divide it, you stitch with the full thread. Sashiko is spun in a way that it's meant to settle into the fabric and become part of it over time instead of just sitting on the top. A possible substitute is pearl cotton. I usually see thread size 8 listed online, or embroidery floss. But because of the differences I listed earlier, the result will be not quite the same. I did some samples with the size 5 cotton pearl I had at home, but when I used it all up, that was when I went ahead and got the Sashiko fabric. And you can see the difference, and the pearl cotton is a little bit bulkier, and you can kind of see how it just sits on top of the fabric instead of really being integrated into it. So if you are going to get one authentic thing, I'd go for the thread. I ordered mine online for just $10, and it is definitely going a long way. And one thing that you don't need is a hoop. So you do not need a hoop for Sashiko. So how about we look at some samples? So I have 3, one with circles, one with a crossed design, and one with straight lines. I did these without a guide as I really like the authentic look. So while I'm getting the hang of a craft, I'll allow myself to make something that's less refined. Also recall that Sashiko is a method of repair, so the only function isn't making things pretty. So we're going to look at our sample right here. The close stitches add bulk to the fabric, which helps strengthen it. Sashiko stitching is the foundation of boro garments, which I decided to cover in another video because I like them so much, so please look forward to that. Looking at the 3 we have here, the straight stitches are actually my favorite, as they are very simple, but I find them beautiful in a rustic way. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Okay, so I've got us a little sample right here. This is one that I was practicing on. Okay, so you're going to thread the needle like any other, but do not tie a knot at the end. You're going to leave it open. Just leave yourself a little tail. And you actually don't make a knot with Sashiko at all. and that's to keep your piece as smooth as possible. Especially considering this is a way to repair clothing, you would want it to feel smooth against your skin and not all lumpy. So you start and then you do a back stitch. So a helpful resource for me was Sashiko's story on YouTube. They have lots of close-up footage of Sashiko and other helpful tips from someone who is far more skilled than I. And that is all I have about Sashiko. If you enjoyed my introduction to this technique, please consider liking and subscribing to the Northeast Georgia History Center. See you next time for the last planned video in this series.